My girlfriend found a hotel keycard in my car. I had never seen it before. That should have been the end of the story. Instead, it almost ended our relationship. I'm 28. My girlfriend Brooke is 26. We had been together for a little over 2 years. Until this happened, I honestly thought we were solid. Then one random piece of plastic turned me into the villain of my own relationship. I work evening shifts at a warehouse. A few months ago, they paired me with a woman named Kelsey. Most of our shift involved checking inventory, loading paperwork, and waiting for trucks that were always late. There was a lot of downtime. At first, Kelsey was just a coworker. We talked about movies, games, food, bad managers, normal work stuff. Then I made one stupid comment after a bad breakup came up in conversation. I told her I was tired of dating drama and probably done dating women for a while. I am bisexual. Kelsey already knew that. Apparently, she took that sentence and turned me into her personal safe zone. After that, she started telling me everything. Not normal friend things, everything. Dates, hookups, arguments, screenshots, voice notes. Details I never asked for. The first few times I laughed it off. Then it became constant. I told Brooke about it because I had nothing to hide. I said, Kelsey tells me way too much about her dating life. Brooke asked if I liked her. I said no, because I didn't. Kelsey was not my type. Not emotionally. Not romantically. Not at all. She was just someone I had to work with 4 nights a week. Brooke told me it sounded weird. I agreed. But I also said it was easier not to make things awkward at work. That was my mistake. I should have set a boundary earlier. I know that now. One night, Kelsey sent me a long voice message after a date. I listened to 10 seconds, stopped it, and texted back, "Please don't send me that kind of stuff." She replied with a laughing emoji and said, "Relax, you're basically my safe guy." I said, "I'm still a guy." She said, "You know what I mean." I did know what she meant. I just didn't like it. Then she started making little comments at work, calling me her work husband, calling Brooke your little girlfriend, saying things like, "If you were single, I'd make terrible decisions." I told her to stop. Sometimes she did. Then a week later, it would start again. Brooke started noticing my mood after shifts. She asked if Kelsey was still oversharing. I said yes. Brooke said, "Then shut it down." I said, "I'm trying." She said, "No, you're avoiding conflict." She was right. But being right did not make what happened next fair. 2 Saturdays ago, I dropped Brooke off at work at 3. Then I went home. I cleaned the kitchen, played games, walked the dog, took a shower. That was my entire evening. At 10, I picked her up. She was quiet in the car, but I thought she was tired. When we got home, she went to grab her work bag from the back seat. Then she came back holding a white hotel key card. No logo. Just a blank white card with a black stripe. She held it up and asked, "What is this?" I stared at it. I had no idea. I said, "I don't know." She said, "It's a hotel key." I said, "Okay, I still don't know where it came from." She asked, "Who was in your car?" I thought she meant recently. I said nobody. She looked at me like I had already failed some test. Then she asked, "Did you bring someone here while I was at work?" That caught me completely off guard. I said, "Are you serious?" She said, "Answer me." I said, "No, nobody was here." She said, "Then explain the card." I said, "I can't." That was the problem. I could tell the truth, but I could not explain the object. And to Brooke, that meant the truth was not enough. The argument lasted half the night. She cried. I answered every question. Where was I? Who called me? Did I leave the house? Was Kelsey involved? Did anyone sit in the back seat? Over and over, the answer never changed. I did not know where the card came from. At one point she said, "Hotel keys don't appear from nowhere." I said, "I agree." She said, "So you admit something happened?" I said, "No, I admit I don't understand something." She said, "That's convenient." That was when I started getting angry, not shouting, just angry, because she was asking for honesty, but only accepting one answer, the answer where I was guilty. The next morning, she asked to see my phone. I handed it over immediately. No hesitation. She went through messages, photos, call history, everything. She found nothing. Then she opened the messages with Kelsey. They were not romantic, but they were too personal. I can admit that. Kelsey had sent things like, "You're the only guy here I can actually talk to." And, "Don't tell Brooke, but my date last night was insane." I had usually replied with short answers. "Wow, that's crazy. Please don't send me details." But it still looked bad. Brooke held up my phone and said, "Why would she say don't tell me?" I said, "Because she overshares and she knows it's weird." Brooke said, "Or because there's something to hide." I said, "If there was something to hide, would I hand you my phone?" She said, "Maybe you deleted the worst parts." That sentence changed something, because now I was no longer defending what existed. I was defending imaginary evidence. Messages she thought I might have deleted, things she thought might have happened, a hotel she imagined I might have gone to. There was no way to win. Then she called her sister. That made everything worse. Her sister already disliked me because I work nights and night shift people are sketchy. Her words, not mine. Brooke told her about the key card. Then I heard her sister say through the phone, "Girl, don't let him gaslight you." I said, "I'm sitting right here." Brooke said, "Then explain it." I said, "I already told you I can't." Her sister said, "Exactly." That was the first time I realized facts did not matter anymore. My confusion had become proof. My inability to explain random trash in my car had become proof. Kelsey's weird boundaries had become proof. Everything was proof once they decided the verdict first. Later that day, Brooke asked if she could call Kelsey. I said yes. Immediately. I gave her the number. I said, "Call her right now." Kelsey answered on speaker. Brooke asked if anything had ever happened between us. Kelsey said no. Clear as day. No hesitation. For half a second, I thought that would help. Then Kelsey kept talking. She said, "Honestly, he's like my safe work boyfriend." I closed my eyes. Brooke looked at me. Kelsey laughed and said, "I don't mean it like that." Brooke said, "Then how do you mean it?" Kelsey said, "I just mean he's safe, like, I can tell him anything." I said, "Kelsey, stop talking." Brooke stared at me. That looked bad too. Of course it did. Everything looked bad by then. After the call, Brooke said, "You let her talk about you like that?" I said, "I told her to stop before." Brooke said, "But you still kept working with her." I said, "I don't choose the schedule." She said, "You chose not to make it clear." That part was fair. I had not made it clear enough. But Brooke was no longer just asking for accountability. She was treating poor boundaries like cheating. Those are not the same thing. The next shift, I told Kelsey we were done being personal. No more dating stories. No more work husband jokes. No more private messages unless it was about work. She got offended immediately. She said, "So your girlfriend controls who you talk to?" I said, "No, I control what I allow around my relationship." She said, "Wow, I thought you were different." I said, "I am different. I'm saying it directly instead of pretending this is normal." After that, she barely spoke to me. Fine. Work got quieter. I preferred it. But Brooke still did not believe me. Not fully. She said she wanted to. She said she loved me. But every time I went to work, I could feel the suspicion. If I answered late, she asked why. If my shift ran over, she asked who was there. If Kelsey was scheduled with me, the whole night felt tense before it even started. The turning point came 2 weeks later. My cousin Trevor came over to help me replace a brake light. He saw the hotel card on the counter, the same card Brooke had kept as evidence. He picked it up and said, "Oh, that's from the hotel by the convention center." I asked how he knew. He said, "Because I stayed there when you helped me move my stuff." I just stared at him. Then he explained. A few months earlier, I had helped Trevor move boxes after his breakup. He had stayed at a cheap hotel for 2 nights. He rode in my car with 2 bags and a jacket. Apparently, the key card must have fallen out in the back seat. That was it. That was the whole mystery. A stupid hotel card from my cousin's jacket. I called Brooke into the kitchen. Trevor explained it to her. She went quiet. Then she apologized. She cried again. She said she was scared. She said the messages with Kelsey made it hard to think clearly. She said she knew I had not cheated. I wanted to feel relieved. Instead, I felt tired, because the truth had not come from me. That was the part I could not ignore. She only believed me once another person gave her an explanation. My word was not enough. I told her that. She said, "Can you blame me?" I said, "Yes, for some of it, yes." She looked hurt. I said, "You can be upset about Kelsey. You can say I handled that badly. But you don't get to treat me like a cheater for 2 weeks and then act like the card made you do it." That became our worst fight. She said I was minimizing how suspicious it looked. I said she was minimizing what it feels like to be falsely accused. She said, "I was protecting myself." I said, "You were prosecuting me." Her sister still thinks I got lucky. Apparently, Trevor's explanation is too convenient. I told Brooke I am not defending myself to her sister anymore. If Brooke wants to believe her sister over me, that is her choice. But I am done standing trial. Update 1. Brooke and I are still together, but things are not normal. We are trying. Kelsey is basically just a coworker now. No messages. No personal conversations. Nothing. That part is fixed. Update 2. Brooke apologized again, this time without excuses. She admitted she let fear and her sister's opinion push her. I appreciated that, but appreciation does not erase what happened. Update 3. I told Brooke one thing very clearly. If something suspicious ever happens again, she can ask me questions. She can be upset. She can need time, but she cannot treat me like a liar before she knows I lied. I should have set boundaries with Kelsey sooner, but bad boundaries are not the same thing as betrayal. Maybe some people will say Brooke was right to assume the worst. Maybe others will say I should have walked away the moment she searched my phone. I do not know. What I do know is this. Trust is easy when everything makes sense. It only means something when something does not. And if one unexplained object is enough to erase 2 years of trust, maybe the relationship was not as solid as I thought.